I would like to have a minute for public comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great, thank you. My name is Steph Burr. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Connecticut Arts Council, and we are advocating for 1% of municipal ARP funding to be dedicated to arts and culture in your towns. Jocelyn is going to help me send out after this meeting a document to you all, which is a list of shovel-ready project ideas, how you might be able to allocate the funding to the arts in your town. We're happy to help if you need with anything. There has been talk from the Connecticut Office of the Arts allocating part of their ARP funding towards matching programs. And I've been advocating for equitable allocation to rural communities, which, and that's, you know, a large part of our region. So there has been talk about a 2-to-1 match for rural communities and distressed municipalities. So it's a good opportunity. You know, nothing's set in stone right now. It's all contingent on the budget, but I just wanted to know that this is a possibility. And I'll be sending out the document to you all after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Chairman, this is Sarah Radesi at DOT. I'd like to briefly share a letter on behalf of our Commissioner, Joseph Gialetti, for Rick Lynn and his retirement, if that's possible.
Sure, absolutely.
Great, I will share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Good, I'm just going to read this really quickly. So on behalf of Rick Lynn, the state of Connecticut and all staff at DOT, I'd like to wish you well in your retirement. I'm happy for you and certain that you will enjoy the new opportunities retirement presents. For over 33 years, you've provided a valued service to the state of Connecticut as the Executive Director of Litchfield Hills Council of Elected Officials and the Northwest Hills Council of Governments. You are a leader among your peers, and the department enjoyed collaborating with you on several projects and programs in your area. You greeted everyone with a smile, even during difficult times, and treated all with respect and dignity. You passionately supported your towns in transit services and strived to provide the best service to the Northwest Hills area. You will truly be missed by all here at the DOT. You should be proud of the job you've done with your COG. Your work has allowed Connecticut's residents, our friends, and families to enjoy a safe and efficient transportation system, and by providing Connecticut's businesses with mobility they need to remain competitive, you have benefited the state's economy as well. Thank you for your many years of hard work and dedication. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors and a happy long retirement. So I'd like to also say for myself that the past 5 years have been working with Rick have been great. He is kind, enthusiastic, and a very thoughtful executive director. So all the best of luck to you, Rick.
Thank you, Sarah. Very kind of you to do that. And I will express my appreciation to the commissioner as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you, Chairman.
You're
Well
welcome.
deserved.
Hetty Ayers from Eversource, if I can as well. And unfortunately, I don't have a formal letter for Rick, but I did on behalf of our entire team. Just wanted to wish him well in his retirement and to thank him for all of his tireless efforts, his service, his dedication, his leadership to the region, and for being a wonderful partner to work with in terms of Eversource. So we'll be sad to see you go, but certainly we are here to serve the region as we have, and we'll be reaching out to the new leadership and introducing ourselves. And I know we'll be forging a strong relationship with him as well. So again, Rick, congratulations, good luck, and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Hetty.
Okay, anybody else from the public? All right, the next item was to welcome Rob Phillips and Allie Smith. Is Rob on the Zoom, Janelle?
I don't see him at this time.
I didn't either. That's, you know, how about Allie Smith?
Yes, I'm here. I've sent out an email to most of the sustainable CT contacts for the region. And obviously I'm here in any type of way to support your municipalities in any way that I can throughout this summer. So I'm excited to be working with you guys and happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next would be town by town issues and any updates. Janelle, you want to just go around the roster? You're muted.
Do you want to start, Chairman?
Sure. Not too much to report. We passed our budget. There's a little bit of chatter earlier. We did it in a very short, very efficient town meeting. We're starting to put together a committee to look at how to spend the ARP money, and things are pretty peaceful and quiet right now. So, and they are finishing up this week the redo of the intersection on the east side of the Barkhamsted Dam, which will be hopefully a big safety improvement, and also improvement in the wintertime when the trucks would stop at the stop sign and then not make it up the hill. But it's been a very efficient project. I'm very impressed with DOT on that one, Sarah. They did a great job on the dam, and the contractor was amazingly efficient in the work performed. So with that,
I drove by that the other day. It does look very different from the original, doesn't it?
yeah, but it's going to be they're supposed to be paving tomorrow, and then I think they're pretty well done the road work. There's still some aesthetics to be done, but the contractor was amazing. I was impressed with the operators who were moving these boulders around and not dropping them on the road on top of a car. It was really impressive to watch.
I'm glad it's going well.
All right. Next up, we have Canaan Falls Village.
Nothing, past budget. Got a couple new businesses opening up, nothing much. Everybody's peaceful. There were no flags burning or armed mobs at the budget hearing or the budget passage, so in town meeting, so I was happy.
Okay, I don't see Cornwall. Next to Goshen.
We also have passed our budget.
Snowing in Goshen.
So, yeah, and we got a snowstorm last night, but it's a lot cooler here. Anyway, so things are good as it relates to the budget, although we did hold our mill for 4 years and did have to raise it this year. We've already decided how we're going to use our ARP monies. We're going to use the provision of lost revenue, which is the average of 4.1% for current year anyway. Town hall, we are open to the public town hall with only a restriction that if you are not vaccinated, you should wear a mask. And Monday, we are opening up our boards and commissions to in-person meeting. We will be in-person and hybrid with a requirement that our boards and commissions record those meetings, and we'll post them on our website. So that's probably the biggest development.
Great. I see Heartland.
Morning. We're pretty uneventful. We passed our budget late in May. We're going to tentatively open our town hall in July. Sadly, we did our reval just now with the prices of homes. Kind of crazy, although we went down a $500,000. It's about a 4% increase because the values of homes just increased and increased our grand list. Other than that, we're good to go. Things are quiet. Sorry to see Rick go. A lot of openings here in places in Heartland, Rick. Love to have you. That's it for me.
Harwington.
Same here, passed our budget. We did a hybrid meeting, worked out really well. And we've been open, the town of Harwington has been open, and we are meeting in person or hybrid. Either way, we're still recording, again, storing for 45 days according to FOIA for the electronic piece of it. Our mill rate went up 0.74 after 4 years of holding the mill rate at 28. This year, we just could not beat out that education budget. It was a $407,000 grab. So we had to do something this year. So other than that, I did have a question to the COG members, if anyone else, which it could be taken up offline, if anyone else has gotten this email from idle reduction campaign, and if anybody's doing anything with that, let me know.
We're not posting any signs anywhere.
I thought just in front of your house, Bob. It's usually where the most traffic is usually.
I had to move that to Mo yesterday.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
We're not doing anything either, Michael.
Yeah. I didn't think so, but I just figured I'd ask.
On to Ken. I do see Jean.
Good morning. I just hopped on. I apologize.
Jean, we're just doing quick town by town updates.
Can I come back in the mix?
Sure, skip you and move on.
Thanks.
Yeah, onward to Litchfield.
Litchfield, we did pass our budget and we had a town meeting this past Tuesday where we updated some ordinances. We did recently just receive the bronze certification for sustainable CT with 3 other towns, and we're going for the silver for August. I don't think right now there's any towns in the northwest corner that have gotten the silver certification, so we're looking forward to starting that initiative. We did receive the road safety audit. It was approved by the CTDOT to help with our congested traffic and the crosswalk issues that we have in the center of Litchfield. So we are tomorrow meeting with the DOT to do a field audit walkthrough. It's going to take about I guess 3 hours. We're going to go through and identify the areas in town that we think are more dangerous. We are having Litchfield Hills Road Race this Sunday, a scaled down version, but I think we're at 500 participants, so we're excited for that. Like Bob, our town hall is open. Also, if you're not vaccinated, we ask that you wear a mask, but it's been going really well, and we've been doing that for at least 2 weeks now, and that's about it. We just, I hope our mention in the Smithsonian Magazine for 15 best small towns in the country. Litchfield was highlighted, but I hope that also promotes the area for people to come visit here this coming season. That's it.
Okay, great. Morris?
We did pass our town budget recently with a little over a $500,000 reduction. That's about 4 years in a row we've been able to reduce the mill rate. Quite lucky this year. Our collections, surprisingly, for this current fiscal year are really good. I don't know what happened. I think it was a lot of back taxes that were able to be collected. We also purchased a new highway truck, and we're getting started on a wall replacement at our transfer station fairly soon, utilizing a steep grant that we received this year. So that's it for Morris.
On to New Hartford. Where's Dan?
Dan's talking, you can't hear him though.
Can you hear me?
Now,
Now we can hear you.
Sometimes there's a little bit of lag on my mic. I'm sorry about that. The part you missed was the same boring stuff about passing budgets that everybody else is talking about. We got through that pretty easily. It did an in-person referendum, which was nice to get back into that groove. We are moving forward with steep grant. We're working hard, similar to what Henry did last year. We were a little bit behind him on our sale of our water and sewer system to Aquarian, which is time consuming, but should be a value to those users over the long haul. And we're also working on our steep grant, which seems to be the slowest process of moving that through, getting the final signatures so that we can actually get that out to bid. So we're hopeful to get that done. In terms of unusual stuff, we did have one of our 3 volunteer firefighting departments vote to merge with a second fire department. So that second fire department, which is the Village Fire Department in downtown New Hartford, will vote on that tonight. Be interesting to see how that plays out. We've had 3 small individual self-taxing departments for many, many years. And one of them, the smallest, has finally decided to join one of the larger ones.
Is that Pine Meadow, Dan?
Pine Meadow did vote to close and join Village
Oh, okay.
a couple weeks ago. And so I think it'd be good for the service. You know, they're charging 2 mills. They don't have equipment, difficult to keep volunteers. And you know, they have this neighboring district that should be able to provide it, that service for them very professionally. So we're hopeful that that gets a nice outcome. But, you know, it's summer paving season, so we're hoping to see a lot of Glasso and friends come into town to get that summer work in. Like all of you, we're going to be trying to figure out what to do with all this rescue plan funding. So, thank you.
On to Norfolk.
Good morning. Our budget passed like everyone else's. We went up 1 mil, but we had dropped a mill last year, so it was pretty much a wash what it was 2 years ago. We've received a letter stating that we're can move forward on one of our bridges that we've been waiting for a year and a half with the local bridge funding. We've started choosing our architect for our new firehouse on Monday night, which is well overdue. We're also moving forward on a solar project we have at our landfill. And this weekend, we are opening our farmers market. So things are good.
On to North Canaan.
Yes, good morning. We are opened at our town hall. We started on Tuesday, mask required if you're not vaccinated. It's been working out well. We had a budget meeting last night, lasted about 15 minutes. It got approved for our budget. We did go up on mill rate, 0.75. Unfortunately, we had to do it because we got hit hard with Region 1 increase this year for the high school. So that's gone up. Also, we're working on a replacement of Toby Hill Bridge. It started and completion should be by the end of November. And then we have the big mess going in downtown where DOT is putting all new drains in, raising the railroad tracks and straightening up the center, which is dire need, and it's big mess. They're going to be shutting it down next week. So people is going to be detoured around some back streets. So that should be very hilarious. I don't know how the trucks are going to go around, but DOT can worry about that. We are going to be having fireworks, our firemen's parade this year for Railroad Days on July 17th. We're going through with it. There's going to be a craft fair and the carnival's coming. So we are opening up, and we have another vaccine clinic coming up on next weekend, matter of fact, and the state called and they want to do another one during Railroad Days. So the opportunities are out there for anybody that wants to get some shots. We're hosting them, which has been very successful for our town and the surrounding towns. That's it.
Roxbury.
Let me unmute. Okay. Yep, we passed our budget. Did drop the mill rate from 15.8 to 15.4, even with an over $700,000 hit from the school. The town hall, we have always been open by appointment. Now we're open. The doors are just unlocked and people can come in. It's working very well. We are asking if they come in to wear a mask. If they don't, that they don't. I'm not going in any battles over that. We did get awarded our local bridge money that we've been waiting for. I hope we haven't missed the construction season, which it may be, but hopefully we have 2 bridges that we'd like to get going on. We're doing the normal summer projects, chip sealing and all of that. Our collection rate is actually 99.5, and which is very nice. And tax collector's done a great job with that. Our fire department is not having their picking and fiddling contest this year. It's their biggest fundraiser. This will be the 2nd year that they're not having it. So that's unfortunate. We are going to be entering, I'm not running again in November. We'll be entering a political season here in Roxbury, and one that we haven't seen in 24 years, actually. And that's about it.
Next, we have Salisbury.
Unmuted. Good morning, everybody. It's all pretty much what everyone else has said, budgets and bridges. I have to leave in about 20 minutes because we have a DOT bridge meeting that's on a long planned Zoom. The only 2 little news bits, we're trying a food waste pilot program where we are actually encouraging 100 people have signed up to take their food waste out of the waste stream and bring it to the transfer station. So that's been very well received. And we have some litigation just came in on the Holly Block Affordable Housing Program, which is unfortunate, but not to be unexpected. So that's all I have. And Rick, how long are you on for? Are you here next week?
Yeah, Rob's official start date is next Monday, Curtis, but I'll be around for the next couple of weeks anyway to help with the transition. And as I've said, I'm only a phone call away.
I'll catch up with you next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Did I see Washington? Washington out there? No. On to Warren.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Not a whole lot of too much interest, same as everybody else with the budget passed. Did lower the mill rate here. We have a farm that, excuse me, the farm that the town had bought, about 90 acres of farmland that we bought it about 10 years ago. We finally got a community committee together for the town and looking to go through some of the survey results. And it does look like there's overwhelming support to keep the property, which is great. And hopefully do a couple things up there, but mostly long-term agriculture and so forth. But we do have a meeting tonight on that. So that's kind of interesting. Town hall is open. The meetings we're doing by hybrid, but giving it up to the chairman of the committee, the group, to decide if they want to go on Zoom as a hybrid. But the selectmen's meetings will be definitely on hybrid, open to the public, and also on Zoom. We are working on our housing plan. Jocelyn, looking forward to moving forward with that, keeping it moving. We were in an article, one of the least affordable towns in Connecticut with also the least amount of affordable housing. So we have some work to do, but we're moving forward on that and we're excited about it. So one interesting thing, and I don't know how many other communities are doing this, but I just realized after a number of complaints about bears, which I know everybody I'm sure is having bear issues with garbage, that USA Hauling does offer a bear cart, bear resistant, has a system that releases when the cart is upside down somehow. They're leasing them out for $10 a month. And we already have a handful of people that have jumped on that within the last couple days. We're hoping to advertise, we have it in our newsletter. And the hope is, as all of you know, that as the bears get more accustomed to the trash, they become more aggressive and potentially dangerous. So it's bad for them, it's bad for us. This is hopefully a win-win for everybody. So if you're interested, call USA and my suggestion. That's all I got.
Great. I do want to circle back to Cornwall, Kent, and Colebrook.
And Torrington, Janelle.
Oh, thank you.
And Winstead.
Thank you. So why don't we move? I'm sorry about that. I happen to do this every time. Why don't we go Torrington, Winstead, and then Cornwall, Kent, Colebrook? And if I'm missing anyone, let me know.
I hate to do this, Janelle. It's Ted.
Hi, Ted.
Burlington. Oh, not bad.
Okay.
You're doing a great job. Yes.
Hey, thanks. Whoever wants to jump in, feel free.
So I'll jump in.
Thanks.
All right, so just quickly, Torrington's budget adoption is scheduled for June 15th. We were awaiting word on some of those changes in legislation with regard to the peer pilot program and distressed municipalities funding. So now I think I'm in a position to advance to our Board of Finance a recommendation. We started our summer's concert series at Cove Park on Tuesday and Friday evenings. We have a strawberry festival happening at Cove Park on June 12th. Our Franklin Plaza Farmers Market, which is really a craft fair / farmers market with some entertainment and STEM activities, happens on Thursday evenings. I'm mostly, and congratulations to Litchfield for that recognition. You know, when something like that happens to any of our towns in the Northwest region, I feel like it's a win for all of the towns in the Northwest region. So I'm delighted. And if you can share that article with us, I'd love to share it with some of my public through social media. Oh, animal control facility, we are still waiting for word from Johanna Hayes's office. I wasn't supposed to do a report on that in the agenda, was I? So Johanna Hayes's office did contact us to let us know that our request, which was for the full, was for $2 million towards the cost of the project. We fall into that donut hole. You know, we're under 50,000 in population, so we don't qualify for the tranche of money in that pool. And we're over 20,000 in population, so we don't qualify for the funds in that pool. So with credit to the staff at her office, they are trying to be creative. The facility is located in Harwinton. Litchfield and Goshen are partners in this. So I have my fingers crossed that she can weave a little magic for us. And then a question to the COG members, wondering what everyone is thinking about where their towns are going to fall on the cannabis bill. There are a lot of elections that we can make on this with regard to land use, council approval or selectmen approval, and public meetings. So maybe some conversation for the next agenda. That's all I have. Thank you. Good to see
Thank
everyone.
you. I no longer see Winchester on the call.
I'm here.
Oh,
Candy's here.
hi there.
I don't know, is Josh on by,
He was, and then I saw him drop off.
oh, okay. Well, just a quick update. It's our 250th birthday this year. We've had stops and starts with, you know, festivities and whatnot because of the planning time, but we're going full. We have our Main Street banners are up in our park, and there's a lot of activity that will be happening as we continue to move through the summer. For the 5th year in a row, we held our mill rate steady. So that was good for us. We had a full referendum. Town hall is open like everyone else. We are getting a road plan together to do our, you know, summer paving, as was also mentioned, and also into the future for that. Our schools are moving along. I think they finish up this week with most everybody else. Our American Mural Project is giving tours. If you haven't seen it yet, they've done a lot of the installation there. And overall, everything's moving along just fine.
I do see Cornwall.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We had a good Memorial Day where we honored not only our veterans, but our citizen volunteers that helped us get through the COVID pandemic. And so we've been busy welcoming some new businesses in town, some new residents. And again, want to congratulate Rick on so many years of service as first selectman in his hometown. He's also done a great job here in Cornwall, and our town, as many others do. I think his legacy is having a really well-run organization, something that's really relevant and useful to all these towns. And I know we're in the middle of our housing planning process. We had a good housing forum, and that's available online if people want to see that on our town website. And also we've received good staff help in updating our recent zoning regulations on home businesses to try to move us into the 21st century as far as getting regulations that work for people trying to work out of their homes and things. So anyway, thanks a lot, Rick, for a job well done, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you, Gordon.
I know Colbrook was on. They may have dropped off. If not, Burlington and then Ken. Ted, are you you're with us?
Yeah, I'll
Great.
jump in. Sorry about the video. For some reason, it's not cooperating this morning. So our budget passed. We just had a modest 0.1 mil, as Chris had said, from Harwich. We share the school system together. I think our 0.1 mil is because Mike has so many kids that our education costs are going up. So in terms of
Welcome to Burlington signs aren't working, Ted. I'm sorry.
So the only issues, just kind of on a regional basis, is you guys mentioned it earlier, the black bear situation. We're looking at an ordinance that some of you all and some of our peer towns are, the ordinance against feeding the black bears. We're going to try to tackle that in the coming months and see if we can get something passed. I added a part-timer to our police department, and it's a college student who's serving as a park ranger. As you all recall, last year with our different parks and recreational areas, and we have a park by the Farmington River, and so that's kind of a test run to see how that goes, to see if we can help manage all the visitors we had last year. But we're hoping it's going to be a little bit better this year with everything opening up. And the last thing we're kind of tackling is I'm getting a lot of requests from community groups on holding some community events. So we just had a Little League fundraiser with cornhole is a new favorite in these different communities. And that went very well. And we're just trying to manage the public health aspects of that. And I have another request for a July carnival and a September Town Festival. So if anybody has any insight into how you guys are handling those requests, that would be helpful. So thank you very much.
And Jean, back to Kent.
Thanks for letting me loop around. Our town hall is open. We opened on June 1st. Same mask requirement. If you're vaccinated, it's optional. We passed our town budget in a hybrid meeting that had some difficulties and hiccups along the way, despite a lot of planning. So we met recently on that, the team that organized it, to see how we can do that better moving forward. We also are moving forward with our streetscape project. Right now, there are basically 2 grants that are active on that. And the first phase is we needed a bunch of temporary easements for landowners. And it came down to I think it was 23 easements we sent out for signature. We had all but one, and that last one took about, gosh, I want to say a month and a half to finally get, and it was holding up the entire starting of the project. So we got that on Monday and hopefully gonna move forward a little more quickly. The TAP grant piece is the other phase. We're in the very beginnings of that, but I have to say the DOT has assigned us it's basically like a concierge team of 2 project managers, and we meet every week on Wednesdays, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, but boy, has it moved the project forward very quickly. Again, we're in the, just the early phases, but all of the, we already have sent out an RFQ, and we got proposals back, and we're ready to move forward into the engineering design phase. So it's been wonderful. I think this was a huge win for them to start assigning people as project managers to make that connection between the DOT and the feds to the municipality. We stood down our testing site on May 27th. The numbers were really, really down, and they had teams coming from all over the state. So we felt that it was a better use of the resource to stand the site down. We recently had a slew of new hires. The assistant tax collector's new. We have a new treasurer's clerk. So we have a number of new people, 2 new people at the transfer station. It's good to get that staffing back up. We just started a Kent sustainability team about, I want to say 2 months ago. We're walking through sort of where we want our focus areas to be. And it's a really, really great team of very diverse residents. So it's very exciting. We have somebody who's the I believe she's the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of New York. So we have a couple of rock stars, so that's exciting. We had our Memorial Day parade, which the feedback, the outpouring was amazing, and the feedback was really just all positive. And we had the last two living World War II veterans were able to be in the parade, so that was really lovely. And just a final thanks beyond thanks to Rick. I've been interacting with you since my days at OEMS, and you were so helpful from that sphere. And the entire COG has just been absolutely transitional for helping me get through these first 2 years as a new CEO. So very, very big thanks, Rick, and best to you in all of your future endeavors, which hopefully will be a lot of relaxing. And that's all I got.
Is that everybody now, Janelle?
I hope so.
You don't think you've missed anybody?
There's been a lot of back and forth of who's coming and going, but yes, I hope I didn't miss anyone.
All right, well, now we'll get to some of the good stuff. It sounds like most of the towns are in the same position, same situation, so that's all positive with the town halls and the budgets. Next up is Mike Uzinski from CCM talking about the ARP.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for the invitation today. Before I begin, certainly want to just thank Rick for all the help that he has offered our organization over the years. He's been a great resource for us, and I know for all of you in the Northwest corner. It's been great working with you, Rick. Best of luck in your future endeavors, and enjoy your retirement. It's well deserved. So the last time that I spoke on the ARP was, I believe, prior to the Treasury issuing its interim rule. And since then, we've seen the interim rule. We've seen some movement at the state and federal level in regards to providing more clarity, more guidance. A lot of you may have already been in the process, or you should have already been in the process of reaching out to OPM through their portal to start to receive your first tranche of funding. What we know right now is the entitlement cities have already received their funding. That portal that OPM has created, your deadline to ask for that money was yesterday. So I know OPM was in the process of reaching out to everyone to get that. They have that allocation document that they have disseminated. It's available on their website, which includes your direct allocation as well as what you will be receiving as far as the county allocation that will be delivered to all municipalities on a per capita basis. And then it shows you what you will be receiving in tranche 1, which is essentially in the next month or so, and then in tranche 2, which is a year from now. It's basically 50% each year. Some changes that were made since we originally heard from Treasury was the fact that for non-entitlement units of government, you only needed a DUNS number. Now they have indicated that you also need a SAMS account and number. You won't need to utilize that right now, but you should be in the process of trying to secure that. Information is available on our website, OPM's website, as well as Treasury's website. That'll likely be for reporting purposes. Again, more to follow on that. Some important points in regards to the ARP funds, and I'll go through some of the interim rule. The state, while they are going to be allocating you all your portion of the funding, they have no control over it. You might be hearing that the state, they're going to be going into special session to discuss ARP allocations. That is their own allocations. So the state has received their own portion of the ARP funds. The governor put together his recommendation on how he wants to allocate the funds, but it needs to be approved by the legislature, and that'll be a topic of discussion in the next couple of weeks. It's also important to note what you'll be receiving right now is not inclusive of the Board of Education allocations. The boards of ed are receiving their own allocations, so you don't need to worry about siphoning off any sort of amount to boards of ed unless you want to. It's certainly not required. We are certainly working with SDE and others to see if there's ways to collaborate on that, but it is not a requirement. One thing I will mention is we have been given some written guidance from SDE that if you do choose to allocate a portion of your ARP funds to education, it will not count against your MBR. It's a special allocation, so it won't be considered or counted against you for your MBR. So that's an important point, and it's good that we got that. In regards to the interim rule, it's extensive. I've gone through it. I continue to go through it. Treasury has a great FAQ document that they have on their website, which is updated on a routine basis. It was actually updated earlier this week. We included links to it, and I reference it quite frequently. But the interim rule really establishes eligible uses, which are basically in the public health, economic development, infrastructure range, and then ineligible uses, which are legal settlements, can't use it for pension funds. And then there's some gray areas and areas in which the Treasury wants you to, or encourages you to look at. And these are to look at any sort of disparities that might exist because of COVID, looking at individuals or communities that were disproportionately impacted because of COVID. So, and it's important to note that even though something is not specifically referenced as an eligible use under ARP, there is a process that you can go through to allocate some of these funds. And it's really kind of a 4-step process. And again, we've included it in all of our documents, our webinars, but you have to identify the harmful effect that the funding will address. So for instance, blanking on a great example, but if you find a particular project that you are looking to allocate the funding, you have to determine whether that harmful effect was a causal or a compounded connection with COVID. So will that funding then help produce a desired outcome in remediating or improving that situation that was negatively impacted because of COVID? So it really comes down to the reporting aspect of it all, really documenting those instances and use of those funds to ensure that it's trying to address an issue that was negatively or disproportionately impacted by COVID, and you spending the money will help improve that either to a status quo or to an improvement level of beyond that. So the interim rule and ARP guidance really falls into a couple of different categories. One, responding to public health emergency. So eligible uses underneath this category is mitigation and prevention for this current pandemic and future pandemics, assisting with behavioral health, payroll for public safety for any work related to COVID. It's important to note that this does include retroactive pay. Again, one of the big aspects is to address the negative impact of COVID. This could be providing grants or loans to small businesses or to households that were disproportionately impacted. There is specific reference to qualified census tracts. You'll see that throughout the document. I know you've probably heard it in various webinars. Those are very selected areas within the state. If you look at a map, there's not a whole heck of a lot. And within the rule, that provides a lot of greater latitude within those qualified census tracts as far as what you're eligible to do. Just because you aren't in a qualified census tract doesn't mean you can't use the funds for what is stipulated in the rule for those QCTs. You just need to provide additional reporting requirements. It's certainly, I think that provides a little bit of guidance as far as we think that this is important, specifically for these QCTs. If any other communities find it valuable, you just need to provide some additional documentation. Infrastructure projects, as indicated in the original legislation, covers water, sewer, broadband. So for water and sewer, that includes clean water projects, wastewater, stormwater, green infrastructure. Also, you can use the funds to prevent any sort of pollution to natural bodies of water. You can also use it to improve drinking water. I know for some rural areas, one of the topics has been wells and septic systems. It doesn't specifically reference it in the document. However, because it does deal with drinking water and wastewater, yes, I would assume that that is an eligible use. In regards to broadband, there's a real push to provide services to those areas that don't have a particular level of wired service. The legislation really targets a specific upload and download speed that you should try and obtain when you look at improving broadband as an eligible use in this category, as well as reliability. You need to make sure that anything that is invested in the broadband spectrum is reliable and will withstand, the test of time or within their natural progressive life. And one of the other big areas is lost revenue. I know that this is somewhat of a confusing area. There is a good, and I haven't necessarily used it, but NLC has, National League of Cities has created a calculator, a virtual calculator that you can help to assist in determining your loss of revenue. But what you really need to do is you need to look at your last fiscal year prior to the pandemic, and you need to look at the sum of all revenues. This would include everything from parking to any sort of park fees, any revenue that's collected. It would exclude any refunds, sale of investments. If you have utilities, that's excluded. Any trust transactions, that's all excluded. Once you do that, you have to compare to a counterfactual trend that would have occurred if no pandemic occurred. So you can use basically a 3-year period and look at that trend, or you can use a 4.1% percentage, and whichever's higher, and you can determine what that loss of revenue is. If you determine that there is a loss of revenue, that difference, you have a great amount of latitude as far as what you can use the funds for. The rule stipulates you can use it towards any government service. So that's quite expansive. Again, you can't use it towards, sorry, I just muted myself. You can't use it towards pension funds or anything else, but any sort of government services, and that would include capital investments, anything that you would be receiving, anything that you would normally do in the course of your normal budgetary process.
Mike, if I could ask you a question on that.
Sure.
When you read it, it says you use fiscal 1920 as your base year, but the calculation is supposed to be done as of January 1st of each year. So do you look at your collections up to that point year over year, or how do you do the actual calculation?
Yeah, so it's not fiscal. It's a good question because it looks at the fiscal year, but then it says December. So that is one of those areas in which we're hoping greater clarity on, because I know a lot of you use the fiscal year in July rather than what the feds use as far as December. So that's, you need to use the December when calculating that trend, I believe.
So you'd look at a calendar year actual collections rather than a fiscal year actual collections.
Yeah. In determining that trend and determining whether that's the loss of revenue would occur based on that counterfactual trend.
Don, I have a question in respect to that as well.
Great, Bob.
So as I had said in our town update, that we intend to use the 4.1%. That's the more favorable number for us. I'm glad to hear that that's on the total revenue and not our anticipated revenue for tax collection. So that helps. Reporting and allowed uses. So I had anticipated that we would use it to offset what would have otherwise been use of fund balance current year. And on reporting, do we need to identify those items that were expensed?
That is something that I believe Treasury just came out with some additional documentation. It was originally anticipated that if you're using it for government services, you don't need to provide line by line, because if you're going to be using it, it could be, for some communities, it can be quite expansive. It could be various areas in your budget, and that's just overwhelming. I think based on some recent updates that Treasury has been providing, you might have to provide a broad brush approach to what you might be using it, but no specific details. I can get you more information.
That would be helpful. And could it cover all of the current tranche that we receive and some of the second tranche?
Can you repeat that? So
if our dollar amount for this allocation we'll receive by the end of the month is less than our 4.1% lost revenue based on the US cities average, can we defer some of that loss to our next year's grant receipt?
If it's within your normal budgetary process, like it's nothing that you're doing outside what you would normally do. So if in a normal situation, you would potentially offset some of that from one fiscal year to another, I think that that could be appropriate.
I think we would book a receivable on the other piece.
Yeah, it does. I think, and this has been one of the things that I have been contemplating for a while. There's going to be certainly some communities that do a lot of unique accounting to make it appropriate for this lost revenue, or move things around to make sure that one thing is eligible while using other funds towards ineligible projects. I think accounting is going to be a key metric here. I think, and the Treasury guidance actually says that you can certainly do this and move things around. You just need to be consistent in your accounting methods.
And just one last question. The 4.1% is on the total grant, both tranches.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
That's
So
year over
if
year,
used,
Bob. Don't you have to calculate it year by year? So if you use 12/31/19 as your base, you do your calculation on 12/31/20 and 12/31/21. So it's year over year, as I understand it.
well, for doing your averages, yes. But what I'm saying is you can only use that 4.1%, which is the optional percentage, once. You can't use it this year and then use it again the following year for the next allocation.
Well, you're using it based on prior to the pandemic, you're using it based on that.
Therefore, it can only be used once. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your current, basically the current number. The number that you're going to be receiving shouldn't play too much into it.
Except for in our case, the number we receive is less than what our losses
I
were.
thought you could apply it to 3 years, Bob.
You can't.
That's for using the average, Don. But if you use what they say, the 4.1%, and not do your own average, then my question is that used once only for this entire grant, both pieces? Or can it be used this year for the money we receive and next year for the money received? I think the answer is you can only use it once.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's the optional. You can use that 3-year trend or the 4.1, whatever works best for you to make that probably to determine whether a loss of revenue occurred or not, or create that higher dollar number so you have greater flexibility in the uses.
Is there any guidance as to who it is that makes these decisions? That seems to be lacking in all of this. Is it the Board of Finance? Is it the Board of Selectmen? May be different for the city of Torrington and maybe Winchester, but.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's certainly something that I've received a lot about. We've worked with congressional offices. I've worked with lawyers to try and figure this out, and everyone has come to a different conclusion. However, I think we have narrowed it down. The original thought was we're in a public health emergency, so whatever special provisions you have right now to allocate in an emergency type use situation, you would utilize. However, understanding some of the executive orders that have been released and the situation that we're currently in, it is likely what you will need to do is you'll need to undergo the normal process that you would do if you receive any other special revenue or CDBG type funding. So, and I think an important point is to look at your charter, look at what it says in regards to that, but there is no special provision that would grant the CEO or just the Board of Selectmen that authority. It would be the normal process that each individual community would undergo in receiving any sort of special revenue.
So we, like several of our communities in the COG, pass a resolution each year allowing the Board of Selectmen to apply for and expend grant funds, state, federal, and so on. And so that would be applicable.
Yep, I would fall back in your charter and then look at the normal process, specifically how they would.
Mike, remember, most of us are statutory towns. There is no charter.
Right.
Yeah, but
So,
that,
yeah, in those situations, then the normal, I guess the best way to utilize it when you receive or apply for CDBG type grants.
Yep,
utilize that
same
process.
thing.
yeah, I mean, the
Thank you.
resolutions cover that, if for our towns, when you pass them at your town meetings, that say, as long as you're not using local funds, you can go ahead and apply and accept and utilize those grants as long as it doesn't require reimbursement, you know, for the town fund. So you don't require a town meeting. You just need Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen approval.
Yep. So
I just wanted to commend Mike, all your hard work on this and keeping us informed, because, you know, a lot of us we're in thankless jobs, and I just want to commend you on doing a phenomenal job at trying to sort through all this nonsense and get us the proper information and being available for us and answering questions. So thank you for everything.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's certainly been a lot of information. If anybody has any questions, feel free to give me a shout out. I know a number of you have already reached out with a number of questions. I will provide you with the best guidance that I have based on all of the information I have read, webinars, phone calls that I've had with Treasury and the White House on this. Sometimes you might not like the answer. I will be honest with you. I've had conversations where someone comes up with an eligible use question and I say, I'll try and be very polite and say that it's probably not so, but probably guide them in a better direction as far as other areas that you might think about using some of those funds. One thing that I will just finalize, if anybody else has any other questions, but we are working with our ARP advisory group committee, which is consists of a bunch of individuals from different backgrounds, economists, public health officials, business officials, on a toolkit for you all to help with this information and a much more easier to digest format. That'll hopefully be available in the next couple of weeks. The one thing, a couple of other just quick little things, when you're looking at allocating the funds, make sure that it's an allowable use. Just be mindful of the reporting process, comply with all local, state, and federal laws. So if you're going to use it for an infrastructure type project or such as sewer or water, you might have some deep regulations that you need to be mindful of. So just be aware of that. One big thing, you know, while we were just had the conversation in regards to your authorities to allocate some of this funds, be inclusive. You know, utilize this opportunity. It doesn't need to be spent tomorrow, doesn't need to be spent next week. Take some time to really thoroughly look at the different options that are out there. I know for especially some of the smaller communities that might be difficult. In that case, rely on the COG. I think that's one of the big things. You have the opportunity to work in a collective group to look at regional ways to make some serious and positive improvements. So look at that as an option as well.
Mike, I would be interested in a more specific definition of how you calculate the lost revenue. You know, Bob is planning to use it. We'd like to use it certainly because it frees up funds. But it's still not clear to me how you actually do that calculation and what years it applies to and what dates you use it for. If you could come up maybe with a paper on that.
I can certainly send something out to the COG. I will say that the NLC calculator that is out there is probably is a good resource. I know that was created with the Finance Officers Association. So I think that's a good tool to start with, but I can kind of provide you with just a broad brush look at the document, kind of more but digestible.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mike before we move on to the next agenda item? Mike Chris said, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if anybody has anything else, you know how to get a hold of me.
All right. Now we have John Simoncelli from Greenwoods Counseling, Maria Kuden-Skinner from McCall Center, and Julie Schoenberg from the Community Foundation to lead a discussion on opioid and addiction services.
Thanks, Don. And thanks for the time today. And Rick, congratulations on your upcoming retirement. So I'd like to share my screen if possible. I think I can. Let's see.
Yeah, look.
Should be able to at this point.
Yep.
Does that look all right?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So we're going to be brief today because I want to leave a little time for discussion at the end. But we're going to have Maria Kuden-Skinner from McCall Center talk a little bit about the task force, just to give you all a review on that, and then talk about some of the current initiatives that we're working on. I'm going to talk about some of the trends and what we're seeing, and the kind of mental health crisis we face in this region and how COVID has impacted that. And then we'll talk about maybe some things we can do about it with Julie Schoenberg. So I'll turn it over to Maria to lead us through the first part.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Chairman, and thank you to all of you. And it's so nice to be with you again. It's been a long time. I think the last time I visited you, we were in person, and certainly appreciate the time, and also appreciate how many times I got to hear the word tranche. That's not usually part of my day to day. So keeping it interesting, and just really want to thank you. I think, John and I and some of our colleagues through the task force present regionally and even once nationally about what a trauma-informed community looks like. And one of the component parts of having a community that sees and understands people who traditionally have been marginalized is having leadership from every town recognize and be part of a solution to an issue that we're talking about today. And that is people who are struggling with addiction, people who are struggling with mental health disorders. And so the fact that you center these conversations and are interested and want to know how you can be part of the solutions is really critically important and heartens me. So I think many of you are familiar with the task force, so I'm just going to kind of go through, one of the things that we talk about is that this is an issue that doesn't happen to somebody else. This is not an issue that we can say that this is an other. This is something that impacts every single one of us, and therefore the solution belongs to every single one of us. And I will tell you, we have a system in place called a spike alert system, and it's pretty sophisticated in terms of the technology that informs it. First responders, EMTs and paramedics who show up on the scene where there's a suspected opioid overdose are required to report that to poison control. Then poison control reports that to the overdose map system. And if we have 3 overdoses in a 24-hour period in our county, we are in what's called a spike alert. So at midnight last night, Litchfield County was in a spike. And then we got a notification a few minutes ago that we had another overdose, and that means that we've continued, we're still in a spike. And so this is something happening right this moment as we sit here. And so the solution, like I talked about, has to involve every single one of us. And that's the foundation of the task force, is that every sector of every community needs to be present at the table and working together shoulder to shoulder towards solutions. So on the screen right now, you're looking at our essential goals, looking at access to care, enhancing collaboration and data sharing, reducing opioid use and misuse in the community, and sharing information about resources with addiction, prevention, safety, and treatment. Okay, John. One One of the things that we look at, because we have lots of initiatives, lots and lots of work happens through the task force, which is almost entirely a volunteer-run organization. We have one paid person, a network coordinator, and other than that, every single participant gives of their time and talent to make this happen. Harm reduction is a concept and an evidence-based approach to keeping people alive who are struggling with addiction until such time that they are ready to embark on their recovery journey, and recognizing that recovery is not a straight line. I think every single person on this call either has firsthand or second or third hand experience with addiction. And I think the pandemic was a really important equalizer for all of us to recognize what anxiety feels like. We saw alcohol sales go through the roof. So even people without a diagnosable condition of addiction would still be able to relate to the fact that you want to escape pain, escape stress, cope in ways that maybe are not as you understand them to be the healthiest or most adaptive. And so that helps us, I hope, to deepen our empathy and understand that people who are struggling with addiction are doing that because they are using that as a coping mechanism for pain. So we want to keep those people alive. We want to be able to help support them and support their families and friends, so that people understand and know where the resources are to keep them alive, to keep them healthy, and to put them on that path to recovery. Thank you. Next, John. The spike alert I was telling you about, we are in one right now. We have 3 tiers to that require us as a group to respond in various ways. Not very long ago, we got all the way up to a level 1. And that caused us to have a roundtable that involved several members of this group, as well as United States Senator Blumenthal and the media. And again, it was an opportunity for us to highlight that this issue is happening right here in our towns, and that the solutions are right here in our towns. So we were able to get some great ideas from people and put some additional efforts in place. And that's really what we're here to talk with you about today.
Thanks, Maria. So just want to share with you some statistics in terms of what we're seeing in the community. So this slide, I just have to move your faces over a little bit. This slide, I think, really reveals that even though we are paying attention to this issue, we're trying to dedicate as much resource as we can to it. This problem continues to get worse. So if you see the Connecticut accidental drug overdose rates from 2015 until 2020, you can see that they're quite staggering. They just continue to increase. And the reason why we have this little graph here that shows you the type of drug that's involved is because traditionally when we focus on how we address addiction issues, we always focus on the drug. And we're here to tell you today that we need to focus on the mental health condition and the addiction, and not necessarily the drugs that are being used. So the drug has essentially changed. It was heroin, 6-7 years ago. Now it's fentanyl, and now we're seeing xylazine. Fentanyl is extremely dangerous. A small amount can cause someone to overdose. People frankly don't know what they're taking. Well, we see this with the different epidemics. In the 80s, it was the crack epidemic. Then we have the opioid epidemic. There are all these epidemics. It's an addiction and a mental health epidemic. And that's how we're going to start to make some progress on this, is if we focus more about not defeating the drug necessarily, but addressing the mental health condition and keeping people safe. This is a map that Sarah Toomey, who is an employee of Greenwoods, puts together for us and keeps current. This shows where all the reported overdoses have occurred for last year. What's in yellow are all of those overdoses that have been reported in through the system that Maria described, right? So the first responders call into poison control calls that into overdose map. So the yellow is all those. The red are fatal overdoses that occurred last year. And the green are all some data from Litchfield County Dispatch that has not been reported into overdose map. Okay. And one of the initiatives that we've had is to try to increase and improve that reporting from first responders. But it's important to point out that even though these numbers are really, really upsetting, they are certainly underreported. So this does not include any folks that have overdosed and maybe been revived by a friend or family member and didn't call 911. This doesn't include any of those folks who didn't get reported in through LCD. These numbers are certainly underreported, and so we're really still not getting a true idea of the severity of the problem. Also point out, you can see there's a lot of color on this map. It's not happening all in Torrington. Of course, that's where the concentration of folks live, but so you're going to see more there, but it's happening throughout the county. This is for this year, so January 1st through June 9th. And again, you can see it's happening throughout the county. What you do see here is better reporting. So one of the areas I think we've made some progress in, first responders are reporting in better this year, which is great. But we still have a lot of yellow on this map, and it's happening throughout the county. This comes from a report that we get from the state quarterly. And the reason why I've included it here is because we are a small county, and yet we have a significant mental health and addiction issue here. We are routinely the second highest per capita rate for drug overdose deaths. And that's routinely for years, second highest, okay? This is why I include the statement, things aren't getting worse in terms of overdoses in our county, meaning they're pretty stable, but they're also not getting any better, right? So I did a apples to apples comparison here for you. January 1st to June 9th of last year, January 1st to June 9th of this year, we're off by 4. 124 reported overdoses this year, 128 reported overdoses last year, okay? Last year, we had 15 fatal reported into ODMAP. At the end of the year, we saw that 68 people died in the county from drug overdoses. For 2020, 287 people overdosed in Litchfield County. So the status quo, I think the message with this slide is the status quo is really unacceptable. We're putting a lot of effort, a lot of time into this, but we need to do more. This is the most recent report. It's the same report that I just showed you, but the more recent one. And I included this because of the last line. Every single county, except for Litchfield, saw an increase in mortality rates. We were the only county able to reduce our overdose death rate, right? And so that is a very, very small accomplishment, but it's only because we have practiced some of those things that Maria talked about, the harm reduction techniques, like improving access to care, like blanketing the county with Narcan, which helps to reduce an overdose, trying to connect with as many emergency responders as possible so they understand the importance of carrying Narcan and administering that. That's the only reason. We were the first county in the state to have a task force. And I think you can see that it takes time. We started this years ago. It takes time for us to finally see that we're having an impact. But this is one positive, if we can call it positive. This is one area where we've seen slight improvement. I really want to make it clear that addiction, and I'm a mental health clinician, of course, but addiction is only one example of the mental health crisis we face. So we're able to see the mental health crisis in the addiction epidemic because we can see these numbers. We can see that people are overdosing at very high rates. We can see that people are dying. But we can also, the point that we need to make is that the mental health issues that people are facing regularly, even before the pandemic in our county, are substantial and they're harder to see, right? So what are we witnessing? Well, an increase in depression and anxiety among the population generally. We've seen that over the last year, so making an already bad situation worse. and an increase in depression and anxiety among children and teens. More calls to emergency responders, more kids and adolescents experiencing suicidal thoughts, and a steady increase in individuals accessing services or reaching out for help. I included just a little data from Greenwoods because, as you all know, we're a small organization located in Litchfield. We have just a handful of clinicians up here. We have a significant mental health issue in our county all the time. Prior to COVID, right before COVID, January 2020, we performed 72 mental health assessments in 1 month. That's a tremendous amount of assessments, right? Especially for a small agency like ours that has a handful of clinicians, and we're doing a lot of other things. We do an assessment. We have to place each one of those individuals with a clinician. It's a lot of work, and I think that what we've seen since I've been at Greenwoods over the last 5 years is that as the word gets out there about what we do, people call more and more and more. So 72 assessments in 1 month. When the pandemic struck, we saw a reduction. We saw fewer people reaching out. They were scared to go out, scared to reach out. They were not familiar with telehealth. Now, as things are opening back up and people are more familiar with all these different ways to access care, we start to see our assessment numbers go back up. So I think that the other point that I'll make here that I didn't include on this slide is that we get more calls now for more acute cases. So sometimes, and unfortunately this is happening routinely, we won't even do an assessment because the person will tell us what's going on with them on the phone, and right away we refer them to a higher level of care. We say, we know just from talking to you about your presenting issue right now that you need to go to a partial hospitalization program, or you need to go to an intensive outpatient program, or we need to send you to McCall Center because you need to do inpatient, right? That's happening more and more over the last year. So the acuity level has gotten much higher. These numbers that I've listed here also don't include any of the other programs that we offer here, like school-based mental health or our community outreach and recovery navigator program. I also want to make the point that 60% of the clients that come to Greenwoods do not live in Torrington. So they're coming from the surrounding community. So I don't mean to, I make a joke with Maria all the time that, my job in these presentations is to depress everyone and make everybody upset with the facts, and her job is to make people feel better. But, this is the reality of the situation that we live in, that Litchfield County, I've lived here my whole life. We have a significant mental health crisis here. It's not just here, it's throughout the entire country. But this is, of course, the area that we focus on and where we live. And COVID has only made that worse. Isolation has only made that worse. So what do we need in our region in Litchfield County? We need to acknowledge that our region has a consistent need for mental health and other social services. COVID has made that worse. We need to recognize that providing services in a rural region presents very unique challenges, disconnection, isolation being some of the most substantial. Recognizing Litchfield County is a health professional shortage region, so it's very difficult for people to find the services that they need. Some estimates are it's a 2-to-1 ratio. For every 2 people who need behavioral health services, there's only 1 provider, making it very hard for people to access care. And the other important thing that I've learned over the last 5 years is that we need to make an investment over time, because in our rural communities, people need to get familiar with us in order to feel comfortable to reach out. So it's taken us basically 3 years in some of our local schools for them to get comfortable with us and then start accessing care. And when they do get comfortable, they access it. They need it, but they need to be familiar with us. And we desperately need a way for these services to be organized regionally. It's very difficult to know. We have a lot of resources that are very hard to access because people don't know about them. We need some way to really organize this at the county level. So what are we here to really ask for? We think that the American Rescue Plan offers an opportunity to start something. And I want to make it clear that we're not asking for this to be sustainer funding. We know that each one of the towns has their own unique budgetary challenges. we're not asking for ongoing funding for this. Essentially, we're asking for seed money to get this project started. We think that the American Rescue Plan, what it offers for behavioral health is a way to weave and network all of these services together. Everything that we're doing at the task force level, we need to bring them all together into one place and organize them better, right? We're essentially asking to fund 2 positions, a regional housing and social services coordinator, that would be a higher level position. Really what I'm describing, bring everything together. And most importantly, that person would be fluent and comfortable in applying for large grants and managing those grants in order to sustain this. And then also another position to do regional community outreach and recovery navigation for all of those folks who need to access care, but they don't know what kind of care they need. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to access it. They don't know how to pay for it. We need someone who can be boots on the ground, going around to all of the different counties, not just assisting those folks those towns that have part-time social service workers, but also those towns that don't have those social service directors. We need to be in those towns present so that people can get familiar with the services that we have to offer. What we're hoping is that both positions would be funded by federal grants after the 2 years that we're requesting here. And I'd like Julie Schramberg to talk about some of the opportunities that she has she's witnessed over the last year or two, and talk about how we're kind of leaving money on the table because we don't have this kind of regional coordination and regional approach. So Julie, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this time to do this. This idea for Regional Housing and Social Services Coordinator was actually hatched with Gertrude O'Sullivan, and she's on the call today, on a call we were on last year, just because of trying to stitch everybody together in terms of COVID response, what was needed, trying to find PPE for nonprofits in a way that didn't get in the way of the medical community's needs for PPE. All of those kinds of things kept landing on our desk. And one day we sat back and went, why is this our job? Why are we doing this? And so we came up with this idea that, there really should be a regional housing and social services coordinator. And the goal of that is to have a dedicated full-time professional who can help, coordinate and partner with the towns and the local social service agencies, respond to all of these federal and state funding opportunities, so many currently available, those that will become available. And here's the thing, ensure that our rural region gets its fair share of these competitive funding advantages, for housing, homelessness prevention, social services, by not only having the capacity to apply for it, but to also organize advocacy for funding for the region's housing and social service needs. We currently don't have this capacity, and so the funding tends to go to other towns and other regions. So what is private philanthropy doing? Well, we're lucky. We have 4 foundations that serve this region, that serves the COG. And since the Litchfield County Opioid Task Force was created, I can just speak for the Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation. We provided almost $750,000 in funding between the task force, Greenwoods Counseling, and McCall, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the millions of dollars which have been available, through the state and federal government, CARES Act, what looks like it's coming out of the American Rescue Plan, some of the other larger federal initiatives that have been proposed. And so what private philanthropy tends to do is we're filling the gaps or we're seeding something. For example, right now, this slide is asking for a potential contribution from American Rescue Plan funding. We know it's going to take time to pull that together. We know there will be some lag time. So what private philanthropy can do is potentially put seed funding for year 1 on the table. It also provides gap funding for programs. For example, McCall will get a federal grant and they will say, well, it funds all of these things, but it would be great if we could also have this thing, but the grant won't fund it. So we tend to smooth out those kind of initiatives and some kinds of programs that can't get funded otherwise. This dedicated full-time professional can help the towns, the part-time social service staff. About half of the towns in this COG have a social services coordinator or director. The other half, I know those requests come through the selectman's office, and honestly, they come in to every social service agency, and sometimes they even come into the foundation. And when they come into the foundation, what that says to me is that there's a real lack of awareness of what's out there. We have a lot of resources in this region. If only we could bring them together to work as a continuum of care. And so that every town social services director knows where in the continuum of care these people are landing, what they need, how they can access services, how every town that does not have a social services director can have a central person or office to call. Say, hey, somebody's presenting at my office. These are the kind of issues. What do you have for them? And to make that much easier to deal with. And that's a lot of that navigator position that John has mentioned. A lot of that floating throughout the community could really help stay in touch with all of those resources and ensure that everyone has the best and most current information on what's available. Because let me tell you, funding for programs comes and goes. I know you've seen this with housing vouchers, for example. I know you see that with farms to families. The boxes are there, and then they're not, and now they're back, and then they're going away. For example, it's just having the best information. And so somebody who can coordinate the social service, housing, homelessness, the nonprofits, but also faith-based communities. For example, the federal government has this vaccination center toolkit that's designed to encourage faith-based communities to become vaccination centers. Who can contact all the faith-based centers in this region and say, hey, here's something that could be of interest to you. This could potentially increase our vaccination rate. The business community right now in homelessness, there's a huge effort in trying to get landlord engagement, trying to look at shared housing to try to deal with people who need housing, who are unstably housed. I mean, Mike Mazinski's comments on what areas were disproportionately affected by COVID. Can there be some work by that position to ascertain, the health equity in the region, so that you can be more purposeful and more directed in how you place your resources. There are so many federal grants that have come through. For example, they'll come into me, I'll look at them and say, oh, I think this might be of interest to community health and wellness. For example, the community health worker grant. I send it to Joanne. She says, wow, that's a really great grant. We could really use this in this region. There are only 3 community health workers north of Waterbury. And this navigation system, I think we've discovered throughout the pandemic, has been very helpful to people. The FEMA funded coaches, for example, that run out of the contact tracing effort. I know McCall holds that grant. Those 2 navigators are doing amazing work, and yet we need way more of them to cover this entire region. New London has done amazing work. They have had a 75% reduction in emergency department transports related to mental health, substance use, and falls over the past 5 years because they have this triage system. So somebody who can really spend some time with New London and say, hey, how does your system work? Compare it to what we have in our region, adapt it to our rural region, and then go find the funding to make it happen. I sat in on a call last week that the Norfolk Ambulance initiated because they're really concerned about the calls they've had with real mental health crises in young people and what can be done to address these. So there are so many of these organizations in our region, nonprofits, and the clients who would benefit from being able to share resources, information, but they are so busy sustaining themselves, number one, that it is really difficult to find time to access all of these other funding opportunities that are coming into the region that are, let me say, that are not coming into this region, but are potentially available to this region. And having a regional coordinator would really help address this issue. We have so many very successful collaboratives and issue-specific groups in this region, but unless you can make the time to do the rounds and attend all those meetings on a regular basis, it's tough to get that high-level view of what's happening throughout the region. Where's the silos? Where's the gaps? How can the continuum of care be better for all of us in this region? And that's what this position is envisioned to address. And now I know we were hoping that if you had questions or wanted to talk about this any further, that, you know, now's the time. We would love to speak to you more broadly about this idea.
I would really like to open it up for questions. And also, we do have Sarah Toomey, who works for Greenwoods, who is currently in this position of Community Outreach and Recovery Navigator, but she's just one person, but she's been doing the work now for about a year. And so she could answer any questions directly that you might have about it. But please feel free. We're very invested in this.
Yeah, are there questions on this?
I'll ask a question. Barbara Henry from Roxbury. So when these grant opportunities come along, there isn't anything there to get these positions at least up and running or funded? I mean, you're saying maybe after 2 years we can get these? That's a little too late.
Well, it's just, well, that's why we're hoping we can get this up and running as soon as possible, and that private philanthropy or, you know, we're trying to identify resources to get this up and running as soon as possible. But what it takes is, and I've run this by so many people, having watched people do this on their own, for example, it takes 5 to 6 weeks of someone full-time to do nothing but work on that application, or you need to have $20,000 at your disposal to hire a consultant. That's just to apply. That does not include administering the grant, managing the money, managing the reporting, ensuring that everything, all the terms and conditions are dealt with. And that's what we're missing out on right now. We have already missed in the past year millions of dollars that could have potentially come into this region for a lot of these services.
Julie, can I just clarify for Barbara, just to answer Barbara's question? My understanding is that there is money on the table that we could use now to fund this position of a regional housing and social services coordinator. If the COG is willing to kind of host this position, we could have year one funding that would be provided to the COG from grant sources to start this, you know, next month if the COG was open and willing.
Jocelyn, what's the timing on that?
Again, my understanding is what Julie and the others are looking for is a willingness for the COG to consider hosting this position and the funding. But my understanding is that it could be available as soon as.
I guess what I'd like to suggest is that the executive committee meet, because now we have a new director coming on. We're asking the COG to host another paid employee, et cetera, et cetera. I think to try to decide the first minute you hear about this is a little bit challenging, but if we could have the executive committee meet on this and then make a recommendation at the next meeting, is that timely enough or is that too late?
Look, it's never too late. We just got to get started. For example, it would help if we knew that COG was amenable to hosting the position, and it doesn't have to be an employee. For year one, it can be a consultant if you're concerned about that kind of drag. But it's
I was just thinking more that it's somebody that has to be supervised in some fashion, and whether it's an employee or a consultant, there still is some COG workload involved, Julie.
Sure.
Anybody else?
I also think there's willingness from agencies like mine to house one of these. I think the Regional Housing and Social Service Coordinator should probably be a COG employee, because we want that person to be reporting to you. We want you to have access to that individual. But for example, the Community Outreach and Recovery Navigator, that may be, you know, housed at another agency because the supervision is already there. So I think there's a lot of room for discussion about the most efficient way to make that happen.
I'd also like to know, so our federal representatives, they have come through with money that is available. That's what you're saying?
In what regard?
Not anything that has to do with this, anything in mental health, the recovery, the outreach.
Well, I think Nicole can speak better to some of that, because I know they regularly apply for federal grants to support their operations and their outreach. The problem is the coordination, because there are so many programs going on at the same time. And the fact that social service directors and or town halls don't necessarily know where to send people. That's the issue, number one. Number two.
Issue. I know that. We've lived that. But I want to know if all of our 3 federal representatives have been contacted to and say, we need help with this. We need a body that can come in and help us get this money so we can get these positions so that, you know, we can serve the people of this region. When you show these numbers, you know, people that are in emergency services, we know what's going on. And it's been very frustrating for many years not to be able to have a place to hand off someone that really, really needs the help. And I think that they have to be leaned on. I really do. You know, after Sandy Hook, our Senator, Chris Murphy, he was going to do something about mental health. It has only gotten worse. All you hear is gun control. And this is serious, serious stuff that many people don't even realize what's going on and the overdoses that are in our region. So,
well, I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Anyway,
I think, isn't that one of the purposes of the ARPA dollars?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I think that's the, I think we're kind of saying the same thing. I think the, you know, certainly our federal delegation heard and, you know, advocated for ARPA dollars to come to Connecticut and to come to municipalities, recognizing that people would be struggling with anxiety and depression and addiction, and then trusting our municipalities to make those decisions that are best for our community.
This is beyond the money. This is, we need a body that is going to be able, you're telling me we don't have the resources to get the money that's available. So even if the municipalities get together and say, yep, we're going to fund this, you still don't have the person to help you get the rest of the money that you need to fund these positions.
Oh no, that person.
Well, that is this person. So that's what we're talking about. The Regional Housing and Social Services Coordinator is that person. And we think that this investment then leads to the federal funding that could potentially get us. So what we're saying is $200,000 from the American Rescue Plan could potentially lead to millions of dollars of funding, because for example, if Julie comes across a federal grant for 6 community health workers, we need that Regional Housing and Social Services Coordinator to be the lead on that grant.
I get
part
that.
of that
You're
would help
telling me-
sustain that individual.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I'm taking what you're saying, that you do not have this person right now. You're looking to get this person.
Right.
That is what I'm
Correct.
saying.
Yes.
We need somebody to help get through all the money to get this person hired. And you're telling me you don't have somebody that can put, you know, write these grants, et cetera, et cetera. You do not have these 2 positions that you would like. I'm
Correct.
saying we need another person, not just the funding. We need the person to get these other 2 people to be able to write these grants. And they need to step up and help with that.
And I
Well, a
think
lot
part
of
of the issue
federal
is they're asking the COG to hire somebody to do that work. And I think that requires further discussion. And if nobody would object, or if everybody's okay, I would suggest that the executive committee meet specifically on this subject with these folks and make a recommendation to the COG, because you're asking the towns who are still trying to decide how to use the ARPA money. You're asking the COG to hire a new body at the same time we're going through a transition. And I think it requires more discussion than 10 minutes at this meeting. I'd like to have if the executive committee is agreeable, if the other members are agreeable, I'd like to have a meeting specific to this subject so we can come back with a firm recommendation.
I'm in agreement with that.
I would like to see a formal proposal done. I mean, it's obviously more than 10 minutes, but I mean, I would like to just see a formal proposal submitted to the COG, and then we can review it at a later time when, you know, and then make a recommendation if needed.
Well, like I said, I agree with you, Mike, but I'd like to see that come to the executive committee so we can have a smaller group and a more detailed discussion.
Correct. It can't be taken up here.
Yeah, done. Executive committee is the appropriate place. Thank you.
All right.
I would agree.
And we will be at your disposal for whenever, you know, if you have questions or would like us to be part of that meeting.
Right. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is an important subject, and I don't want to give it short shrift, so it needs more attention. Rick, I also saw that Rob Phillips is on without video, but if we could introduce him quickly, and then we can ask you and Rob together to schedule an executive committee meeting with John and Maria and Julie to discuss this issue. Rob, I understand you have video problems. Can you speak to the to the meeting?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Yeah, no, my wife's on a meeting, so I have apparently video problems here, but looking forward to working with everybody.
All right, so you've been listening to all this. So if you and Rick get coordinated on when we can put an executive committee meeting together, I think, this topic merits that kind of discussion.
Yep, happy to do that.
Thank you all for the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next we have Demas. Do we have you? I know John Field is out. Is Paul Gibbon? And I skipped over one, but I was told that Manny Barreto was not available today, so we'll reschedule that at maybe the next meeting. Demas?
Yeah, hi, it's Henry from our Region 5 office. I'm just covering the meeting on John Field's behalf. Just let everybody know John Field's doing well. He's on his road to recovery, so things are going well. For us as an agency, currently we're looking at scaling back a little bit now on the COVID response to more recovery. I will be brief because the item's still remaining on the agenda, and Paul Gibb will be following me for more specific Region 5 information. But as I said before, we are transitioning to a recovery phase. I'm glad to hear from First Selectman Parati that the vaccinations are still being offered, especially in the northeast corner. So that's very good news that the opportunity for vaccination is being provided for people who still want it. And that I will now go offline at respect for time remaining and let Paul make any comments.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Yeah, I'll keep this short. Back in March, we sent out to the public works directors here in Region 5. Actually, I think we sent it also to the CEOs. A public works and equipment inventory. We asked that the public works directors fill this out and get it back to us. This is to assist with some mutual aid planning that the Public Works Subcommittee of the REPT is engaged in doing right now. So far, of the 43 towns in Region 5, we have received surveys back from 29 municipalities, but we still have a few outstanding that we'd like to round up if we possibly could. So here in the Northwest COG area, we have 6 municipalities that have not responded yet out of, I believe, the 20 municipalities that we have in the COG area. 6 municipalities still to respond in the NVCOG area, and I think 2 in the West COG area. So what I would like to do is to send out sort of a final reminder to the public works directors that haven't submitted the inventories yet. And I will copy the CEOs of those municipalities on this correspondence, and anything that you can do to assist with getting those municipal surveys completed and returned back to me would be greatly appreciated. Just by way of background, this is an initiative that grew out of the storms that we had back in 2018 that really hit the southern part of Region 5 very hard. We did a study of the response to those storms. We interviewed a lot of the public works directors down in that area of the state, and they said, yeah, it would have been a good thing if we could have called upon a predefined or predetermined task force or task forces to come to our assistance to help get the roads open. And that's really what this is all about. We're trying to ultimately organize task forces and strike teams that can respond quickly to help a very hard hit municipality get its roads back open. You look at the town of New Fairfield in 2018, I think they had something like 83 different locations where their roads were impassable in both directions and needed help in getting them back up. So that's what the ultimate goal here is. The Public Works Subcommittee of the REPT thought that in order to create these task forces and strike teams, we have to start by, first of all, understanding what it is we have out there for equipment and where it is. And from there, we'll look at how this equipment is dispersed throughout the region and see what makes sense in terms of, what equipment we would need for a particular task forces in the various areas of the state. The idea here is that each municipality would be asked to contribute a small amount of equipment. We don't want to drain equipment from any one town to go to respond to a disaster somewhere else in the region. But if we have each town contribute something towards a task force, we can get the resources that are needed in a hard hit area of the state down there without stripping coverage elsewhere in the region. This is a concept that's been used in the fire service for years. They do have predefined task forces and strike teams which provide mutual aid throughout the region. They are activated periodically. They were activated even for the storm in 2018, where fire service task forces were called into the New Fairfield, Brookfield area. And we just thought that, using a similar kind of a concept in the public works community made a lot of sense. So I'll follow up individually with the public works directors that haven't responded. I'll copy the CEOs on that correspondence, and any assistance you can give to getting these surveys returned is greatly appreciated. I'll take any questions anybody may have.
Anybody have any questions for Paul? I guess you were thorough.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And congratulations, Rick. You'll be missed.
All right, next thing, Mr. Chris, do you want to defer to the CCM legislative update and the cost legislative update next week, or do you have some stuff you want to talk about today, since we're getting pretty tight to the...
Yeah, we're getting pretty tight. Unfortunately, we're out of time. There's not a lot I can cover, but we are having that update today from CCM and cost. And also, a couple real quick things. Obviously, you saw the TCI bill died, but most likely will come back in another way, shape, or form. And some of the stuff will go to most likely do a special session. But just quickly on the zoning bill, I know that was a big thing for a lot of people, was watered down with some amendments. There's some opt-outs in there. We're waiting to get guidance on how towns can opt out of the two categories in there for the zoning bill, the desegregate Connecticut bill that we were looking at. It got watered down quite a bit, but there's some opt-outs in there for, granny pods, multifamilies for municipalities to participate in, and for the local municipalities to opt out of those areas to help. And then obviously you saw some communication on the broadband bill, basically kind of leaving municipalities, rural municipalities off the hook because of the ARP funding, and redirecting that money back to the suburban areas. And then we're still waiting on confirmation of pilot, and then the actual guidance on how 6448 is going to affect municipalities going forward, which is the hybrid meetings, different types of hybrid mandates, and in-person and remote correspondence. So be looking at all that. If we had more time, I'd cover more, but unfortunately we don't. So sorry, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.
Thanks, Mike. Conduct, Rick, are you talking about this, or the request for a motion to approve the SIP?
I can touch upon this very briefly. These are fairly straightforward amendments to the state's transportation improvement program, a culvert improvement in the town of Morris, the streetscape improvement project that Jean mentioned earlier for the town of Kent. And there's also just routine replacement of traffic signals. So an endorsement of these three would be appreciated.
Okay, can we have a motion? That was Henry, second Charlie. How are we doing this, Janelle? You gotta...
I didn't make a poll for this item. I did for the administrative items.
You did a poll for this or not?
I did not.
All right, if everybody wants to raise their hand. And
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, I think it passes. Administrative items, typically we do the minutes and the financial statement together. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Henry,
I'll second it.
Charlie, are there any questions for Rick or anybody on the minutes or the financial statement? Any questions or corrections? Did you know you said you had a poll on this one
I do, yes, for them combined. Go ahead.
for these two? Okay.
Yep. One abstention.
One abstention, okay. The budget, attachment D, can I have a motion to approve and then we'll discuss it?
So moved.
Henry,
I'll second it.
there seems to be a trend here. Rick, do you want to give the quick summary of that?
Sure. The agenda packet included an estimate of the sources of income for next fiscal year, as well as a proposed operating budget. I'm pleased to report that once again, we can put forth a balanced budget where the anticipated expenses do mirror the revenues that are projected to come our way. Michael mentioned the failure of House Bill 648 to pass, which did include a funding formula for the COGS at the budget that we have included in our COG budget. I'm still hopeful that that will be satisfactorily addressed, but that's really, again, one of the question marks at this point. But again, I'm not overly concerned about that. It's just, again, a little bump in the road with regard to nailing down the sources of income for the COG. But a motion to approve the proposed budget would be appreciated.
All right, and it includes all of the proposed pay raises for the staff. And it includes some contingency for consultant, as well as we have a pretty healthy fund balance also, correct, Rick?
Correct. And the one other sort of bump on the budget is the cybersecurity, which we do need to budget for, much like the towns need to do, as sort of a new line item, but we're trying to protect things appropriately from the cyber standpoint.
All right, are there any questions from the members on the budget? Okay, Janelle, do you have a poll on this one?
Yes, I do. Again, one abstention.
It's consistent. Next item is the work plan summary and budget for the regional service grant. Is there a motion to approve that?
So move.
Charlie, second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Rick, you want to give the quick summary on that one also?
Sure. Each year, OPM requires us to submit a work program for how we plan to spend our regional service grant funding from the state. That was emailed to you a short while ago, and it primarily is a continuation of the work that we do in various activity areas at the COG: land use planning, transportation, emergency management, housing conservation, economic development, recycling and solid waste, as well as the various regionally coordinated programs that we administer. So once again, if the proposed work plan looks okay to the COG, a motion's been made, I guess a vote to endorse the proposed scope of work would be appreciated.
All right, any comments or questions? All right, Janelle or?
Yeah. Here we go.
Another abstention. Okay. Eleanor, you're up next with the nominating committee.
Yeah, all right, so this is was presented at the May meeting. I think we all received a copy of the memo that was prepared dated April 22nd. I think in the interest of saving time, I'd like to just make a motion to approve the committee recommendation for Chairman Don Stein, Vice Chairman Bob Valentine, Secretary Charlie Parati, and Treasurer Michael Chris.
And that also, that includes Henry Todd and Matt Risk on the.
I'm sorry, yep, and
that
on the
part,
executive
yep.
committee.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Don.
You made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any comments or questions or other nominations? All right, I guess we can vote on this one.
Tuesday.
Okay, that one passed. Next, there was a question about returning to in-person COG meetings and mask policy. It sounds like most town halls are open. It sounds like we've gone back to in-person board meetings for a small town. Or we're giving the boards a choice. What, you know, I would be in favor of going back to in-person meetings or a hybrid meeting, although I don't think we have the capability for hybrid meetings in your conference room as yet, but I understand it can be done fairly easily, but what are people's thoughts on going back to in-person?
I think we should go back to in-person meetings and just ask people that are not vaccinated to wear masks.
I agree.
I would agree, Don.
Okay,
And
Bob.
I'd also agree with Henry and Bob also.
All right, let me raise a question. Is there anybody who would object to that? In person, and those who are supposed to wear masks, or the state recommend they wear masks because they're not vaccinated, wear masks, basically. I guess hearing no objections. The next meeting we have is in July. And then we are on hiatus for August typically. So let's plan the July meeting for in person then, and that'll also give everybody a better chance to meet Rob at that point. Is there any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I just ask a quick, can we get that presentation that we just saw from Greenwoods?
On the opioid situation?
Yep.
Rick, can you get that and distribute it?
Sure, I'm sure they'd be happy to provide that for consideration at the executive committee and by the COG members. So I'll check with John or Maria on getting a hold of that. Thanks.
Don, before you adjourn, can I just give an update from Rep. Hayes' office? It's Janine Lupo.
Go ahead.
Most of you received an email from me a couple days ago that 5 out of 6 of our transportation and infrastructure projects were included by the T&I committee for consideration. And as of last night, all 5 of our projects are still under consideration because they did pass through the markup phase in the T&I committee. So one of those includes Route 109 in Morris. So I'm really happy to share that information. The next phase is consideration from the full house on the floor, and they're looking at hopefully doing that on the week of June 28th. So I'll continue to update as that progresses. As for community project funding requests, the appropriations committee is still undergoing its clarification phase for certain projects. As Mayor Carbone indicated, we had some clarification for that particular project that went back to the committee. So we're hoping that that's still viable, but I don't have any further updates on CPF requests, but really happy to see that the Route 109 project is still with T&I.
Thank you.
And can I just say that to Rick, because I guess this is the last time we'll all be together. And what a pleasure it's been. Congratulations on finally quitting, and I'm right behind you. I know Bob's right behind me. So you've really just been an incredible leader, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. You have always put the fun into your position. It's not easy, and but I appreciate everything you've done for the town of Roxbury and me personally. I consider you not only a colleague but a friend.
And I will comment, there is an upcoming golf outing for those who want to socialize with Rick. And Darlene and I are conspiring on ways to embarrass him in a little get together.
Good.
So there will be a get together, more details to follow.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara.
But the embarrassment part's important too, so.
And I'm going to miss his wife's treats at Christmas.
That's true. Maybe she can
Right.
do it on an ad hoc basis. All right, thank you, everyone.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.